Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We've got a full thing to cover today. We're going to be discussing what's your home worth. And I get asked this question a lot, especially as we transition into our spring market. I have received myself 3 clients that have called me today asking about my home value. What do you think my home is worth? And so I know you guys are at least getting that as well. You're getting people that you may have closed a home with, or maybe as interested in maybe putting their home on the market, or they just are curious about how the home values are working. Maybe they want to buy, maybe they want to sell. We're going to talk about some of the things to consider when you are looking at home values. So this is not meant to be kind of an overview of the marketplace. What we're going to talk about today specifically is the differences and the similarities of CMA and how you should look at the numbers, or what kind of information your clients are looking for. So I'll go through fairly quickly, and then this is not meant to teach you how to do a CMA from start to finish. A really good market analysis or market evaluation really takes me several hours to complete if done right. So this is not going to be the end-all be-all tonight by any means. But I will give you some pointers of things you may want to check out as you're doing your own research for your own clients. So I'm going to just jump right in. We will go through this fairly quickly. I'll be done at 6 o'clock. I'm going to cover a little bit of Realist, a little bit of Redfin, Zillow, talking about the different AVM models that are out there, what you should maybe be concerned about, how to explain it to your client, and then wrap up by putting together a inner workings, not fully adjusting my comparables, but putting it together in a CMA type of format that's user-friendly and easy for the seller or the buyer to understand by using Cloud CMA. So that's where we're going to go tonight. I am recording, so I've muted the lines. If you do have a specific question about a specific CMA that you're working on, I'm happy to be another set of eyes to let you know maybe you're off base, maybe you shouldn't consider this as one of your comparables. I'm happy to help you, but I will not be doing your CMAs for you. Like I said, it takes a long time to actually do it right. So I'm going to give you an example of a client that I'm working with currently. They are currently living in the house that I have up on the screen right here. They live at 3824 15th Avenue Northwest in Gig Harbor. They are renting. They actually are pre-approved. We were under contract for another property in Gig Harbor, and then they backed out on inspection. So they've been out on the hunt, but now they're considering maybe buying the home that they're living in. The seller has come to them saying, hey, your lease is up in August. We are thinking of putting the home on the market. Would you be interested in purchasing it? So they had connected with the seller's real estate broker, and they already were working with me. I have a buyer agency agreement that's signed, but I don't want them to buy something that's way out of reason as far as their budget. I don't want them to get locked into a 30-year loan or what they would call their lifelong home. And when there's an alternative, which is finding them something with more property. We've been looking at homes with 2 or 3 acres, which they definitely want to live on a farm. This would not be their forever home. They indicated to me that this would be maybe a home to get their kids started in school. They have a very young family, 4 children, 3 boys, 1 little girl, new baby. So they don't want something that needs a lot of work. So as you look at this situation, I know what their hot buttons are, and I know what their cold buttons are, and I know what they're looking to do long-term and short-term. So I'm definitely looking at this CMA from a buyer standpoint. So as I'm a buyer, I'm sitting here looking at, I don't want them to, I think I know what they're going to list the home for, but that doesn't mean that they're going to list it for that price. The listing agent that's going to be listing it has been sending them what she considers CMAs, and I want you to be very clear. I'm not going to put her, I was going to put her name and information on the screen, but I don't think that's appropriate. I will show you what she sent them, and then they forwarded to me. So what she sent them was, hang on here just a second. She sent them from the MLS a 2-line report for a CMA. This is what she sent them. So I'm going to kind of poke holes at this a bit. Get to the CMA. And what we've got is we've got eight different comparables. And now, as you can see, there's one that's $845, one $699, $690, $679, $639, $579, and $549, which puts your median price at about $667, the low at $575, and the high at $834. This is not a CMA. So I'm going to just be very clear and upfront with you guys. If somebody asks you for a CMA and you're a buyer and you're looking at something like this, that's not a CMA. What this is comparables that may or may not be used in a CMA. But this is too wide of a range. Some of these have basements, some of them do not. Some of them have more lot size than the subject. Some of them are smaller than the subject. You'll notice that some of these, if you looked each of these addresses up, some of them would have a better condition. Some of them were even on the golf course. So being on a golf course is going to get you more money when it comes to using the analysis that we use at Best Choice Realty. So there's a lot of things to consider. You just can't throw a bunch of comparables, 8, and then adjust them or make an assumption based on this as far as what the price should be. So this is not a CMA. This is just comparables that are thrown at a buyer saying, here you go, here's what's sold in the recent, looks like November, January, at least the agent did going back 180 days. So that is not a CMA, but it does give you some sort of baseline to work from. I would have to dig into each one of these and take notes on each one to determine how does this compare to the subject. Is there more square footage? Is there less square footage? Is the lot size appropriate, or is it bigger or smaller? And make those appropriate adjustments. Is it on the golf course? Is it not? The subject is not on the golf course, so I would have to make the adjustment if I was using something on the golf course. And I would need to know what factor to use for that. Other things to consider when you're doing adjustments would be the condition or the type of property. You want to try to compare like-kind properties. So something that's a rambler, 1-story with a basement, would not be appropriate. This is a 2-story with a basement. So again, we would have to maybe eliminate this one, the 845. This is not be a comparable property. So if I was looking at a CMA that included all of these comparables, I would ask you to remove this 845 from the mix because it does not compare. It is not a similar like-kind property. An appraiser would not use that as one of their comparables. So that's what I wanted to show you with that particular thing. And then they threw a number at my client saying that they would sell it to them for $555. So I asked another follow-up question. I said, how did they come up with that number? And then they said, and as most clients will utilize different online tools, there was an online tool, as you guys are familiar with, and I'll show it up on the screen here, is what is my home worth? And this is using redfin.com. So they kind of have how we calculate the Redfin estimate, and you can actually plug in your property address, any property for that matter, and it will use the data from the MLS. So that's the good news about Redfin, is they're actually pulling data that is from our MLS, which we use as well. But they basically use this as an estimate, just like a Zestimate, that is meant to get the owner to use Redfin to list their home. And all I know is that it's definitely been talked about in the discussions between the seller and the buyer. And I feel like the listing agent is not doing a good job for her seller in as much as she did not do a good CMA to communicate price between the seller and the buyer. And if the seller is going to hire this particular agent to represent them, my guess is that she'll probably list for more, because I'm actually seeing more value than what Redfin has got the property listed at here at $557. This is just a Zestimate or an estimate based on these recent home sales. Now, if you flip through, if you kind of scroll through this, what's interesting about this is that they're sold. Now, they're going back to June of last year for that one. November, That's a valid comparable. But notice they have not adjusted for, this is a 3-car garage where this one is not. The subject is not. So again, this one right here, look at this. This is on a different type of property. I probably would not use this property because it definitely is not a like-kind property. But you can look at these comparables and make and glean some information about whether this would be like the subject or not. And I can tell you the subject it says it's a nostalgic kitchen, but it certainly is not at this level here of this quality. The quality of the construction on the home, the subject, is not like this at all. So obviously this would be a different value. I mean, look, these kitchens are custom cabinetry kitchens. Mine are very, very basic on the subject. Chef kitchen with butcher block island. I mean, it has much more upgrades and the flooring. So although mine's a custom home, this one has certainly a view, and it is definitely not in the same ballpark as the comparable, as a subject. So the comparable and the subject don't match up. So because Redfin looks at the location and looks at the recent solds from the MLS, they could think that this should be considered, when in fact I would not consider it. And so it can inflate or it can deflate the price that you would come up with when doing your estimate. So another place that a lot of clients will go to would be Zillow. So let's take a look at what does this estimate say? And again, this is not a CMA. This is just taking data that is done off an algorithm on tax records. It's not using MLS data. It may, based on some figures, but as far as I know, this estimate is only pulling from tax records, but it's putting this at $578,729. When they bought it in 2017 for $502, it's taking an algorithm based on tax records and equating that and putting a estimate of $578. So we definitely have a spread between $555 and $578. And my client is wondering, Rochelle, what should we offer? What would be a good offering price to get going with this property? Now, not knowing what the seller is going to do, if they're going to hire the agent or not, what I can do is gather the information that is readily accessible to me. And they gave me their address, which I plugged into Zillow and plugged into Redfin. But another place that a lot of people get confused about is they go to Realist, which is also tax data. It's coming through a company. Actually, it'll be much easier in the next couple days. This information is going to be much more available to you guys on Matrix 360. They're redoing it. So this will be much easier. You're not having to flip between like 5 different screens to get what you need. So it's going to be more integrated. You guys will like it a lot more. But this is the property. This is the subject that we're talking about here. And if you scroll down, there's an estimated value right down here, and it's called estimated value, the AVM. And what AVM stands for is the automated valuation model. And an automated valuation model, again, is not a CMA, but a lot of agents think that they can give kind of an estimate for their clients based on the AVM, and it can be very much different. So my guess is the agent, the listing agent, who would be listing the property, went to Realist, popped into Redfin, and basically came up with a number to give her sellers that, hey, just sell it for $555 if the owners want to buy. If I am going to market and I'm going to do all of this extra things for you, I can get you probably more than the AVM. And that's what we're seeing in Gig Harbor right now. We're seeing that the actual market data is trending higher than the AVM, and that's likely the case in many areas where we service. So do not go off of the AVM. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to list for $558. The confidence score, look at this, is only 80%, which means that I'm not that confident. I wouldn't want to price my home off of a B score at 80% confidence that it's correct. I'd want to make sure that I'm not overpaying, or not, if I'm listing the home, I'm not losing money on my sale to my tenant. So again, you can get more information on the tax records, some of the improvements, some of the assessed value is, please don't make that kind of mistake. That's embarrassing. If you're a real estate agent, you clearly know an assessment is not a CMA or not a market analysis on a property. So again, it's an indicator. It's based on the tax value, what your taxes are based off of. And certainly the numbers are higher than 443, or in this case right here, it's going up approximately 14.97%. Every year. Well, last year was a very desirable year. We don't know how much 2019 will be, but don't use this assessment as a way to do your analysis as well. That's just an indicator of what the taxes are based off of. You can and you should, just like an appraiser, you should look at the total living square footage. And notice on this particular listing or this particular subject that the MLS is showing 3116, the tax records are showing 2522, and it's because there is below grade square footage that may or may not be factored in. So there's 1190 of square footage in the basement. It's below grade, meaning you're not getting full value for below grade square footage when you have an appraisal or when you do a CMA. So when you're comparing, you want to compare similar type properties that have the basement, that have a 2-car garage. We can certainly do an adjustment if it has a 3-car garage, but you want to try to compare this type of scenario. The lot square footage, 18,000 square foot, which is, somebody asked me, well, isn't that close to an acre? It is not. You should have a good understanding if you're a real estate agent, and for me, a 10,000 square foot is close to a quarter of an acre. That's a good way for me to kind of add on. So when somebody says I want, a fairly good sized lot, a 10,000 square foot lot is a pretty good sized lot. There's usually a front yard and a backyard. So that's a good kind of rule of thumb that I use. And then that way you can kind of understand a half acre is close to about 20,000 square feet. So this is just less than a half of an acre. So it's 18,000 square feet. So when you're comparing other kind of properties, it's best to kind of compare similar lot sizes. I don't want to be comparing a 2-acre parcel to this 18,000 square foot lot. And even though it's a custom home on its own lot, I do want to compare like kind properties. So that would not be sufficient. I wouldn't want to compare an acre even, and then try to make the adjustment. I think I can get where I need to be by just doing a search around, again, we want to stick with about a mile or less if at all possible, and then look to see if we keep the similar year built and similar kind of condition, and make the adjustments for things like garages or types of condition or the golf course. We're going to probably do a little bit of adjustment on that. So the next step that I'm going to use, I have matrix. You will also want to verify that it's the right people you're dealing with. So I did open up a preliminary or a trio with my title company. We've talked about that in past calls. Don't forget to do that, because sometimes I'll find discrepancies. I'll find that the discrepancy on Realist, again, Realist is not always accurate, you guys. I'll find that the updated tax information that the title company has may have updated square footage. It may have additional information about seller information that would be important, or other things to consider when it comes to the bedrooms, baths, and the count that's important as I'm comparing. So don't forget, even if you're not sure if you're going to get the listing, go ahead and open up a trio with your title or escrow company of choice, and they'll go ahead and confirm that what you're seeing on Realist is correct or is close enough that you can utilize it to base everything off of. If you start doing the CMA and then you find out after you've done hours of work that you've been off by 500 square feet, it does throw you for a curveball. So let's go ahead and use the information that I have here on Realist. And the next thing I want to do is go right on into Matrix. So I am using Matrix to find my subject, my comparable properties. Let's see here. Here we go. Let me go back to my criteria. I've got it all queued up so that, in the interest of time, we have time to get through this. But what I did is I typed in, I wanted active, contingent, pending, and sold. I went back a year because I wanted, again, I'm doing it for a buyer, so I want to see the trends. And I do know that we've had double-digit appreciation, so I may be able to make the adjustment there on the comparables. But really, you should be trying to stay with 180. But I didn't get very many comparables when I only did a quarter mile. So I was playing around with my time and going a year back to see if there was anything that I was missing. And I did find a few more when I did it that way. I also on the right, you'll notice I wanted anything above 500 because again, they purchased it. And I know the prices have gone up since they purchased it. So again, I'm using that so interest of time, make sure I'm not missing something. I'm trying to validate whether 555 is the right number that they should offer, or if they should offer perhaps maybe less. But I think if they're planning on buying this, they might be able to ask for closing costs. Again, I'm going to make that assumption based on these numbers I'm finding here. So I did 2,400 to 4,000 square foot. You can use a range. Some of you go through massive amounts of data and you don't need to by just adjusting for square footage. If I was going to show other properties as comparables, I'm not going to want to compare a 2,000 square foot property to this one that has a basement that has finished square footage. So I'm using 2,400 as a baseline, and I don't want to compare anything that's over 4,000. In fact, I probably want to narrow that down to 3,500. So I can make that adjustment. So again, my range needs to be reasonable when it comes to like-kind properties. Notice on my square footage, I don't want to compare half acre or more. I could extend that out a bit just to see if I get anything. I didn't do that. Again, it's an art, not a science. It doesn't really affect my matches very much. And again, I want just residential. I do want all the sale types, all for sale by owner and seller representation agreement. In this particular area of Gig Harbor, there are some deals that are done, just like the one I'm talking about here, that are done between handshakes. It's not on the MLS, and they didn't record it after closing of escrow. So I want to make sure I capture that data. So there's 4 a quarter mile out, and so I want to take a peek at that and see what I've got. Again, I went a year back, so I need to keep that in mind. But there's this one that's pending, so that's a recent comparable. I notice already it's got a 3-car garage, very close on square footage, 3075, but it doesn't have the basement, so I would have to adjust that on that one. This one right here also has a 3-car garage, so I have to take off probably about 5,000 to 10,000 for the 3-car garage, but that puts you about 555, and I haven't done any adjustments on that. You can kind of flip through to see the condition, and you'll notice the condition on this has kind of the older cabinets, so this would be a very good comparable. Practically perfect. It's in a gated community. Again, a gated community could offer more security, which also is a subjective factor that you can adjust when you're doing your comparables. For this particular comparable, I would probably minus out, because my subject is not in a gated community, so I would minus out probably 10,000 for the gated community, and then also I would adjust for the garage, so that's another 15. So 565 was the sales price. It might be about 550 when I work out the numbers, and again, I haven't adjusted the square footage. And it has an extra, it looks like it has an extra 3/4 bath. Mine has a 2.25. So I would need to adjust this one also by minusing out on this one as well. So, but this is a good comparable. Love that it sold, but again, it's gone up in value because that was in April of last year. So I'm going back a little too far. It does look like 555 would be a fantastic deal. Looking at this one at 600, they've got full price, over full price for it. It's 3,100 square feet. It has a 3-car garage. It's got more livable square footage, so I have to back that out, meaning I have to minus that from the adjustments when I actually put it together on my CMA. And also on this one, same thing on this one. It's in Southport. It is also in a gated community. I'd have to minus some things out. Again, this is not like-kind property, because mine is in a different type of situation. So I'm going to go out a little bit in distance, and you want to start small and work your way out. And so I'm doing that here by using my map search area, using the address, and looking to see if there's anything that I'm going to go back to my 180 days. I don't feel strong about that. Okay, and I'm going to have to go out a mile, it looks like, to find other kind of properties. And now I've got 5. So let's take a look at what I've got here. Notice I've got this one that just came on the market today. So, I mean, those are going up. We've been looking at properties and we're seeing the prices going up. So if they could lock in something that has acreage then it's in the 650 range, and they can go up to 750, 800. They would be doing well because the prices just keep going up in Gig Harbor. But this has got the similar kind of lot size. I'd have to adjust for the square footage, but that's an active comparable. This is a pending comparable at 550. Notice the year built is older. It's got an extra car garage, but this would be a good comparable. It is older inside, but you know, ours is not as new or nice as the pictures show. So that would be a good comparable. That one we looked at already, which would also be a good comparable. And this one was also a great comparable. And again, we have to minus out for the garage, but they got 532, not 549. So this would be a good comparable as well. The next one here is 595, 2616 square feet. I have to minus out for the garage. I'd have to adjust for the basement that's unfinished or that's partially finished. And this one has the golf course attached to it. So again, that can be a factor. It could be a factor of $25,000 to $50,000, you guys, on a golf course, being on a golf course versus not being on a golf course. So even though my lot size is the same, a golf course or a view or something on waterfront is going to impact whether you use it, number one, as a valid comparable, and number two, how you adjust it if you are using it is one of the comparables. So with that, once I come up with my comparables, I write down the MLS numbers that I have here, 1352385, and I'm just going to, for the interest of time, show you how to pop this into Cloud CMA. And again, I want to compare like property, so I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go with that one because it is closer, and I can adjust for condition. And that one I could leave out because again, I'm looking for sold comparables, what an appraiser would use to validate the price, because I'm using it from a buyer standpoint. Now, if I was using it as a seller, I would want to include the actives, pending, sold, expired, all of those to make sure I'm properly assessing the property. But from a buyer, I'm looking for like an appraiser. What are 3 sold comparables that are like my property? And then let's go ahead and adjust them into Cloud CMA. So I go ahead into Cloud CMA. I've got it queued up here. When I'm in Cloud CMA, I want to create a new report. I want to go to CMA. And if you want to use my CMA account, you're welcome to do that. The login is my email address, Rochelle@bestchoicerealtywa.com. And the password is Maverick8 with a capital M. So it's MAVERICK and the number 8. So if you're going to cloudcma.com and you want to play around with it tonight, you're welcome to do that. Just use my email address as the login, and the password is Maverick8 right there. Then you pop in the address here of the property. It's Northwest Gig Harbor. It automatically will find the property and put the square footage in that you want. And then it says, how do you want to get comparative listings? You want to include them. You don't want to use the quick and dirty, because otherwise you're going to be just like Redfin or Zillow, just automating things with an automated valuation model, where you want to really do a good job with your CMA and pop the ones that you found based on the criteria that you wanted to use, because you have the market knowledge. You've seen inside their home. You know what the comparable properties are. And so you want to use the exact listings as you compare. Don't go crazy with this. You shouldn't be sending your clients 8 or 9 listings. It confuses them. They're confused. They're like, how did they come up with this number of 555? When in reality, I can give them a good estimate by just adjusting these 3 comparables here. Now, I may want to call this guy that's pending and just let him know that we're going to be buying a property very close to this home. And find out what they ended up, did they get close to the asking price? So I may want to call the agent and just get some market insight on what this property actually is going to close for. A lot of times they won't give that information to you, but if you tell them the reason why, that you're working with an off-market property and working with a buyer who's looking to buy something in the same neighborhood, just wanting to know if you got close to the asking price or if you helped pay closing costs. that would be great to know, and then I could give some market knowledge. This has golf course. Down here, there's some adjustments right here, and you can type in golf course. I'm going to just adjustment, because mine is not on the golf course. I'm going to do a minus $25,000, and then you save it, and then it adjusts the comparable. So you want to do the adjustments for every one. If this was on the golf course, I would also want to make sure, and it's along the golf course, so I do need to make the adjustment for that as well. So I'm going to make the golf course adjustment. Again, each neighborhood's going to be different, so don't just say, oh, mine's on a golf course in Maple Valley, so I'm going to do a $25,000. It's different in Maple Valley on this particular golf course or that particular golf course. This is where your market knowledge is going to come in very handy. Or if you know people or you have a good connection with your broker, to be able to make those kind of adjustments. And then this one right here is not on the golf course, but I need to adjust because mine does not have a garage. For example, mine has only a 2-car garage. So I'm going to minus $7,500 from that. Again, it's a range of anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 in the Gig Harbor area. So that brings mine down. So you kind of play with these numbers here, and I've got more work to do, but I'm coming up right at 6 o'clock. But I'm making those adjustments based on my market insight and the local knowledge that I have about what adjustment factors to use. If you'd like me to send you the adjustment factors, I can do that. Just send me an email tonight. This is what I would use roughly when you're dealing with something in Pierce County. King County is going to be different on the square footage, but for the most part, a lot of these assumptions are very, very adequate for roughly, average properties, not ones that are, custom or that have a lot to it. These are common objective factors that you can adjust when you're working on your CMA. Just make sure that if you're doing one-to-one, say I do the adjustments on the square footage on this property, that means I also have to adjust the square footage on all of my comparables as well. So don't just get tied up with something else, like I'm done with my call here and I leave this alone. It's not ready to go yet until you get done doing all of the adjustments that are necessary for each comparable. When you look at this kind of summary on the right, what it's showing me, and again, I haven't done the adjustments, the average would be here. The high, you don't want to be higher than what you want the price them to go in at. So if you're trying to tell the story, don't tell a story that's not truthful. Make sure my high is close to, maybe it is $555 that is the best price. If it's $555 as the offering price, I want my high to be $555, my average to be roughly about $545, $550, my median. So again, you don't want to have a big spread is what I'm trying to explain here. You don't want your low to be, 500 and your high to be 587, because obviously it's not 507. They purchased the property and done work to the property. So my low needs to be reasonable. So I need to kind of get much more tighter on my summary of prices before I package this and send it to my client for review. But it puts a nice report together. It explains how a CMA is put together. You can add some additional language in there. And then it doesn't look like this. This is what I don't want to see. I don't want to see these going out by you guys from the MLS. Clients don't understand this. It doesn't give you a good comparison to really compare. Are you really comparing like-kind properties or are you not? And this is very confusing for a client when they get something like this. Although it created an opportunity for me to show them by putting together a cloud CMA that I have a good market knowledge about there. And if they do want to offer the $555, when I got done and put this all together, it probably works out to be, if they're willing to pay the closing costs, that's not a bad price to pay for that home, especially when the Zillow and some of the other automated valuation models that are running behind the scenes on this particular property is showcasing their home at a higher value. So I don't think they're overpaying, but yet I do think with proper knowledge, by me showing them a cloud CMA, showing them that they could probably get the median or the average to be around 550, what that's showing them is that they can probably get the seller with good negotiation to pay their closing costs for them. And that's what I'm going to advise that they do if they want to offer. They may choose, because the house is not big enough or the lot size is not big enough, that they may want to go a different direction. And in that case, I'll represent them on purchasing another property and then the listing agent will sell the property. And my guess is she will actually do a good CMA. She won't just go out the door with something like this. And she'll go ahead and put together an actual CMA and show the seller that she's worth the money that it takes to put a CMA together and to actually do a good job and actually take the listing at a higher price. It's probably worth more than the $555 if I was going to list the home, because I would do more preparing, staging, photographs, putting a Matterport together to showcase the basement that's been finished, making sure that we update the cabinetry to match what the comparables are doing in that area. There might be some additional things that they do once they get the renter out of the property. So there's things to be considered when you are selling in an off-market situation versus on the market. So I had a text message from one of my other clients today. It was actually over the weekend, and he said, Rochelle, I got your CMA, but oh my gosh, it's less than what I thought. And he says, Redfin says my home is worth $279. But when you did the CMA, it looks like my home is worth $255. Why is it such a difference? And I didn't respond to his text message right away, but he came to his own conclusion on his own, which was that he said that Redfin is just trying to get him to list their home, and so they put a number out there that might be higher. And I answered him back once he came to that conclusion. I said, yeah, that could be correct. Redfin and other automated valuation models are looking to the seller to give them information real time so that they are more apt to go with that company or that entity or somebody that they endorse because of that inflated price. So make sure you educate the seller or the buyer about the pricing and help them understand that that particular entity or automated valuation model hasn't taken into account the condition, the upgrades, the square footage, the addition, the deferred maintenance, in this particular case, the detached garage. There's many different factors to take into consideration when you're putting a CMA together. So hopefully this was helpful for you tonight, just to kind of get a basic understanding of what not to consider, what to kind of look out for, and try not to make rookie mistakes out there. This, again, was not meant to be an end-all be-all call where you're going to know how to do every single CMA. It's an art more than a science, and you need a lot of practice before you actually can do this really well without help. So if you do want to play with Cloud CMA, go ahead and do that as you're working on your new listings. If you want to tell me, hey, Rochelle, I've got a CMA in Cloud for you, can you just take a look and make sure I've got the right comparables? I'm happy to go in there and even look at your adjustments to see if you're adjusting correctly or if you're compensating too much or not doing enough. I will give you some critiquing on that if you'd like. Have a great week, you guys. And again, we'll talk to you next week. We're going to cover escalations and multiple offers next week. So hopefully you can join us for that. And it's a busy time right now. So good luck with your CMAs, and let's get some more listings. The listing contest is wrapping up, and it's really fun to see that we've got some top listing agents that are coming out. And I got one agent, she says, I've got 4 listings that are gearing up for spring. Another agent called me on Friday and said, I've got 5. So I know there's a lot of things going on right now. So hopefully you can get some additional support and training on CMA. The MLS offers a basic CMA class that you should take. And if you haven't done that, go ahead and take that. And if, like I said, if you have additional help for specific questions, I'm happy to be another set of eyes for you. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.